You're watching Every Days and Saturdays, USCC veteran. Let's go, baby. And here's your host, Bryan. There I am. Gosh dang, you would think by now I'd be better at all that stuff. But hey, what's going on, friends and family? Welcome to another great show today. We're going to be doing another coffee talk with Bryan, and we have our special guest back again, Marie Slider Hendrickson. And we're kind of going down the series of, starting off with our childhood trauma and then working our way up into our adult life, and kind of covering a lot of things that are kind of hard to talk about. You know what I mean? And Marie and myself, we're trying to be as transparent with our life and open ourselves up to everybody so you guys can get a look into what we've gone through. I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that have gone through similar things. Maybe not exact, but there's a lot of similarities when we start talking about our stories, especially when we were childhood, especially if we grew up around the same time frame, right? But let's not wait any longer. You know how we like to do. Let's brew up some coffee. But before we do, we'll go ahead and bring on Marie. What's going on, Marie? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing okay. Today's kind of a high pain, low energy day, but I'm here and excited to talk to you.
Yeah, we get those days, right? You gotta, I guess, ride the highs when the highs are there, and work it through the lows when the lows are there.
Yes.
But hey, let's go ahead and brew up some coffee real quick. All right, what do you guys got in your cup today? Don't forget about Cash Coffee. If you're out there looking for a different, type of coffee, try some Cash Coffee. They're outstanding. They are, they're very much support veterans and first responders, and they're very community related. So I really like their coffee as well. They have some great flavors. I've tried the Mad Gene one, and let me tell you, it was really good. But what are you drinking on? You got some tea, right?
I got some hot chocolate today.
Oh, hot
with
chocolate. Hey.
some almond milk.
Oh, that's little almond milk. Look at that. That's special.
It is.
That's that Utah little flavor.
Yeah.
But anyways, today we're going to talk a little bit more about our trauma, right? But now we're going to talk more about teenage trauma and rebellion and how life was for us after sixth grade. Because last time, if you guys have been following along, if you didn't, go back and check out the previous coffee talk. That was episode 10, where we talk about kind of our kindergarten through sixth grade experience. Now we're going to kind of continue down that road and see what K through 6 did for us into, and put us our trajectory into our teenage years. So go ahead, Marie. Go ahead and start it off. You got any poems or anything for us today, or
I always have a poem. Sorry, let me pull one up real quick. Heck yeah.
Geez, you started this.
I know.
Told you.
I'm so sorry. Okay, let's see. I will do. There is. Hold on. Sorry about that. I probably should have just pulled it up before.
No, we're good.
How about I'll say She Is Me, because we're going into teenage rebellion here and some of the mistakes that I started making, and that kind of led into my adulthood and some of the stuff that I did based on my resentments that I hadn't healed from. And so, I'll read this. So I was going through doing some step work. If anybody knows about recovery stuff, you go through step work and kind of go through your past inventory and try to see what your life was actually like through a different perspective and take responsibility for the things that you did, try to make amends and move forward. Well, this last time through the steps, I was kind of like looking through and I was feeling really, really bad about myself. And I came up with this poem. It was very divinely guided. But so this one is called She Is Me. I am still afraid of me, at least the me I used to be. I want to love her and forgive. I feel I must so I can live. Looking at my past mistakes, I am reliving past heartaches. I hurt others and myself. My heart was hidden on a shelf. Aggressor, victim, both within, intertwined around the sin. Drinking, drugging people to any high I would pursue. Resentment aplenty on my mind held me tight like chains that bind. The hurt in others I could see, I often used them to help me. I wouldn't admit when I had betrayed, I couldn't look back at scars I made. I just blamed them for their flaws. As I look back, I have to pause. I see the patterns I have sown. The damage caused has been shown. With some hindsight I have borrowed, I'm changing roads I have followed. God is showing me new ways to escape resentment's maze. I'm learning how to make amends, seeking to reset the trends. I'm learning love for old me. One day, maybe I could see she wasn't bad, she was sick. Being afraid is a mind trick. I do not need to hold fear. She's been healed by the one who's near. She is not some distant monster. She is me. I already love her.
Nice. Love it.
Thanks.
It's great. You do some great writing. Um, all right. So let's go ahead and get this show on the road and start off with where we left off.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I talked about, some of my childhood stuff that I went through. A couple things that I just wanted to touch on. One of the things I say a lot. I re-listen to the podcast and I say I'm going to try and make a conscious effort to not say
We should start doing a counter for her. You know what I mean? It's like click count.
But
Boom
but
one.
yes. So growing up, one of the things that I kind of struggled with when I was younger, because I tended to try to be a chameleon to try to make people like me, right? There was a lot of I was very overly obnoxious and I was very, very loud because I felt like my voice wasn't being heard. So I would just be loud or obnoxious and try to get attention. And I also, with that, I was kind of like a weird kid a little bit, or at least I used to get picked on all the time when I was younger. So growing up with six older brothers, and you get picked on a bit that way, but there's also, sorry, there was also in elementary school, I would get picked on a lot too. Yeah, wow, sorry.
Now you catch yourself after you say it.
Yeah, maybe in 10 podcasts, the ums will be gone. But yeah, so I got picked on a lot. I was kind of a little weird sometimes. Like with my ADHD, I would kind of get bored a little bit, and I sometimes in during the playground, I would put sand in my hair, and I would go sit on my desk, and I would sit and just do this to let the hair fall or let the sand fall down, and then I'd play with the sand. So there was just some like weird things that I would do. I just wanted to bring that up because there was a couple just interesting things, or I would, when I'm around people, I would be a chameleon and be like, I have to make you like me. And then sometimes it would come off annoying or other ways. Or then
Overcompensation kind of, huh? Like,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Or then other times I would isolate. And one of the things that I would do is I would just go sit in the playground by myself in the sand. And in Arizona, they had this little wand of magnet where you can go into the sand and find all the iron in the sand. And I would just go sit there for like the whole time during recess and just like be alone. Or I didn't really know who I could talk to, or didn't really have a safe place. So I would sit in the library most of the time. Or I always felt more comfortable with the adults at school instead of the children. Because like I said, with the children, I was overcompensating or I'd get made fun of. I had some really good friends. That was good. But yeah, I would go, I worked at the cafeteria and I worked in the library. I wanted to be around the other adults, if that makes sense. It was really interesting. There was just, I don't know, I just felt off forever. I just felt off. And I couldn't really identify why. I didn't really understand what was going on in my little brain. So this just goes into, kind of seeking comfort in other places, or just not feeling right about myself. And so then we go into, junior high, and I start hitting puberty, and puberty kind of really affected that body image, or not understanding myself. There was a lot of just uncomfortableness, insecurity. Like I said, when I hit puberty, I started gaining weight. So then the diet started. I never addressed the food insecurity, or the food hoarding, or the binge eating. And so then when I hit puberty and I started gaining the weight, it was, oh crap, I can't gain weight. So that's when the purging started. And that was kind of the big addiction that was going on in that time. But then around the same time as I'm developing, other people are getting curious about my
Mm.
developing body. And so I had somebody that was inappropriate, and
Like
I
groping
didn't.
you type stuff,
Yeah,
or yeah,
and I
gotcha.
didn't really understand it. I just knew like this is attention that's coming, but I didn't know how wrong it was, and I kind of like went along with it, but I knew I didn't feel good about it, and it led into a lot of why this body isn't mine. I already felt uncomfortable in my body, and then I'm like, hey, this body isn't mine. And then you go into the fact, with my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I found out that I've gotten a lot of answers when I was younger, but I had like stretch marks that most of the girls my age didn't have. And so there was
Mm.
a lot of uncomfortableness in my body, and I didn't know how to understand it. And so one of the ways that I made myself feel more comfortable was I would cut the bottoms of my feet so that
Mm.
nobody knew that I was cutting, and I could walk on the pain, because I was like, I just don't know that I'm not comfortable in my body, and I don't know why. And
Right.
so I was doing the binging and purging, and then I was doing that. And I just, not being comfortable with my body. I also didn't have the best kind of hygiene for a little while. And I also, I would wear like real baggy clothes. And
Mm.
I remember that there was a couple shirts of my dad's that I used to love to wear, they were button up plaid shirts. So like that first year in junior high, I was just kind of awkward, and didn't really know what to do. Um, and so then around that time, I was introduced to weed and alcohol. I had tried my first drink years before. I tried it and I was like, oh, this is kind of good. But I was like 9. And I was like, oh, I don't, I'm nothing came of it, right? I was 9. I knew that it was kind of good, but I didn't touch it again. But then after all of this stuff is going on, I had somebody who could give me weed and alcohol. And that was when kind of my life just arrived. I started being more confident in my old skin, the false confidence. I had something that made me feel better, that could help me pretend.
Mm.
And so that was kind of the beginning of my shield, right? I already was becoming a chameleon, but now I had something that could shield me. And so that was when I was in elementary school. I was a straight A student. I was doing awesome, straight A's. I was even in this advanced math class in 6th grade. Well, all of this stuff is happening, and I start failing classes or getting lower grades, and and this kind of happened for a couple of years, and my parents really thought it was some of the friends that I had. They didn't realize that I was the one. I don't know if yeah, they didn't realize that I was kind of the one that was not doing well. But I was such a good chameleon at home, that it didn't seem like it was on me, right? So my brain goes into like 50 billion different ways when I think about this time in junior high.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was the weed, there was the alcohol, and then it went into over sexualization. I started at this point, and some of the people who are close to me know about this, and some people don't. But I experimented in same sex stuff as well. And it became like wherever I could get the attention was my thing. And
Right.
so between the drugs and the alcohol and the over sexualization, but I also felt less than because I was still going to church. And so then I was like, oh, this is not okay, and I felt excluded, even though people didn't really know. I excluded myself, and then I was taking offense to everything that was being said in the church, because I was like, oh, well, you don't know me, type thing. But I was being such a good chameleon that nobody really knew what was going on with all of this stuff, right? And so then I would end up in situations that I didn't want to do. And I felt like my body was my worth. I felt like I had no peace. Um, and any chance I got, I was ditching school to go get high or get drunk. When I ended up in a different junior high school, and when I got to that other junior high school, I kind of like reinvented myself a little bit. And that was when I started hanging out with more of the, um, we'll say, like the punky type kids. Even though as a chameleon, I could get along with mostly anybody. I could jump into any group. But the ones that I felt the most comfortable with were kind of like the punky, emo type. I had a lot of friends that were kind of like that, and really really enjoyed that. I had some really good moments. But there was so much that was just plagued by insecurity. And like I even remember seeing a picture in my junior high, and like I would sit like this. I would just sit forward because I was like, I need to hide and I need to be small. And somebody had taken a picture, and I was like, no, no, no. And like I was just trying to hide and be small. And
Mm.
there was so much of that. If you caught me off guard, I was insecure, but I could pretend. I was just such a good pretender. And like I said, nobody really knew. I had been in therapy since I was in elementary school, because as a foster kid, it's a requirement. But I got so good at selective honesty. I would talk about this so that you didn't ask me about this.
Right.
And so I would talk about, yeah, I'm uncomfortable with my childhood, but I wouldn't talk about, the sexual stuff that was going on. I wouldn't talk about the reactions to that sexual stuff that was going on, what I was doing because of that. I wasn't talking about the drugs. I wasn't talking about the alcohol. But poor me, pity me, here's what I went through as a kid. And so I was never getting the help that I needed because I just put on this show. And then let's see, I'm trying to think. Yeah, so there was just a lot of uncomfortableness, not knowing where I belonged. I also ended up moving to, so I did two different junior highs, and so then I did two different high schools as well. And so
Hmm.
with that, I didn't really feel a stability. you know I didn't really, it became, I have no real stable friends. There was a couple friends that I had, growing up, but I was horrible to them, sometimes. And I didn't even recognize, I thought I was being like such a good friend, but I can touch base more on that later on. But anyways, so yeah, so I'm in this where I'm just feeling uncomfortable. I'm making choices that aren't the best. The drugs and the alcohol are just all the time, you know. Um, so then I end up in high school. So at this point, I'm in Arizona. Okay. And I end up in high school. And at 15, I started working at McDonald's because you could back then. I don't know what the age requirement is now,
With a
but you can
worker's
work at.
permit or something. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, just for the
Yeah.
weekends. And
Right. Okay.
I ended up making some good friends there, but I joined a metal band for a little while. Just I was just trying to find a way where I fit in. And I didn't quite understand anything. But some of the guys that I worked with at McDonald's were the ones that were in the band, and it was a lot of fun. Like we enjoyed it, but yeah, on the side, like I said, I was drinking or getting high most of the time. And there was another situation that happened where I went a certain distance with somebody and they tried to go more, and with the sexual stuff. And that happened a few different times, but I felt like I had to go along with this stuff because I started it. So even though I'm uncomfortable, I've got to continue. There was just, I could not enjoy life because it was about the drugs, the alcohol, and the over sexualization. And I don't even know how best to explain it. I
You were
was
so
just
consumed with
uncomfortable.
all that, you weren't even thinking about life in general. You were just consumed with everything else.
Yes, yeah. And like during all of this time, I am so grateful. I went to seminary for church still, and like I would still kind of go to church occasionally and whatnot. And I'm so grateful that I did, because that kept that belief in God alive for me, which was something that I could hold on to. But I didn't understand. I just knew what other people were saying about him, and I was like, well, I'm going against what you're saying, and so God can't love me, or like I would keep him in this little box and just in my heart, and just be like, okay, God, here's what I'm feeling. Oh, I don't like what you have to say. I'm going to walk away, you know, or I would say, I like what you have to say. Thank you so much. I'm going to walk away anyway. And so I just wasn't, I was really full of so much self-pity back then. And I blamed it on other people, but I mostly just blamed it on myself. So a lot of people, they when they go through a lot of this kind of stuff, they go through anger at other people. And I had some of that, and it's an outward projection. But I mostly just went inside, and I was like, what is wrong with me that all of this happened in childhood? What is wrong with me that people want to take advantage of me? What is wrong with me that I can't just love? Like, why what is it was just, what is wrong with me that I can't be normal? Because there was so much stuff that was out of the normal with me, the over sexualization, or the drugs and the alcohol. There was just all of this stuff that I just did not feel like I was normal. And so I just internalized it. And like I said, the drugs and alcohol just helped me hide it. So anyways, moving forward, when I was about 17, I I remember one of my friends. She was kind of like a Satanist type thing, and I don't remember everything that happened. There's a lot of, with all of this stuff and the dissociation. There's a lot of memories that I have lost over the years.
Sure.
But I remember bits and pieces of, there was one day that I was on the side of the road with a friend of mine, and my aunt saw me and she knew that something was wrong. And so she came and picked me up, and I was like so pissed off at her. And Anyways, around that time was when my parents finally started realizing that I was not in a very good place. They probably knew the whole time, but kind of was hoping that I would self regulate type thing. But they ended up as I spoke about on the first one, getting in contact with my brother up in Utah, and my sister-in-law called me up, and I just all I know is my sister-in-law says, "Hey, I need your help, taking care of my son. Your brother's working a lot. Can you come up here?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so within 2 weeks, I was saying bye to friends and I was leaving because I had gotten to this point as a chameleon bouncing around that I didn't really feel permanency anyway. So I was like, why
Mm.
not? Let's do this. So I moved up there, but I found out a little bit later that it was my family trying to get me out of where I was at, And like I said, a lot of it they thought that it was the friends that I was hanging out with, you know.
Little
But
intervention there, huh?
yes, yeah, the intervention. So I end up moving up to Utah, and I kind of touched base on this on our first talk as well. One of my really good friends, I had written her a letter, and I told her that I was leaving, and I don't even remember everything. Like I don't remember doing this. She told me after I got out of the military. She showed me this letter, and I was heartbroken that I wrote this. But I was putting blame on her, like I can't be around you anymore because you're a bad example. I was the one that first got her high, but I was sitting there trying to blame her that she was a bad example.
Oh,
you
sheesh.
know yeah, and there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. It's like I couldn't take responsibility for what I did. I put the blame on other people, but I beat myself. It was this weird dichotomy that I was living, where I was blaming other people, but yet inside I was worthless. I don't know if that makes sense. And so anyways, so there was a couple other people that I tried to put blame on, but it was me the whole time. So anyways, so move up to Utah, and when I get up to Utah, I wherever you go, there you are. And so I found the same type of people because they were my people. Like I needed people that could justify my actions, that I could hide from or hide with. You know what I mean? And so I found a group of people that I could drink with or I could drug with. And one of them was a boss at the job that I worked at. I worked at a fast food restaurant, and I did decided one night. So I was living up in Utah with my brother and his wife, and he had gone out of town. And so that weekend, I was 17 at this point, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go party it up, go get drunk. And so I went to this guy's house, and I was 17 and they were 22, 23, 24. They were a little bit older. And I remember there were three guys and one other girl that was there. And I don't remember if there was anybody else. But at one point, they like we got really, really super drunk. And I had never been a hard drug user. It was only weed. That was it at that time, but I had gotten so drunk, my inhibitions were down, and they started smoking something and had me smoke something. And I think at this point, it was meth.
Mhm.
I don't know for sure, but I think that's what it was. And the next thing I know, I had three guys taking my virginity. And I remember bits and pieces. I remember I was kind of floating above watching this happen. And I remember my like I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle this. I remember hearing my boss say, "You can't tell anybody or I'm going to get in trouble." And like I am so like out of it, and I'm like, and there was a long time because I remember him saying that, and I didn't fight them off. I was so drugged and I was so drunk. I didn't fight them off for a long time. I blamed myself on it. I was like, well, I put myself in this situation. But
You
it took
shamed
me a lot of,
yourself.
yes.
Yeah.
And it took me a lot of years to realize like I was 17 and a virgin. In no way And I never did hard drugs. In no way would my right state of mind put myself in that situation. And so it took me a lot of years of kind of like trying to process through. It's like, yes, my choices led up to that situation, but they took advantage. And so it was really rough. And I remember coming out of it and sitting on the couch curled up in a ball, and this lady sitting there on the ground. And I just remember, like, why did you let this happen? How could you let this happen? But she was so high and drunk herself. I don't know if it had happened to her. I don't know.
Right.
But then one of the guys drove me home and made me take a shower with him. And I didn't know at the time what that was. I was like, oh, is he trying to connect with me? Like, I don't know. But I was just like so scared. I didn't know what to think. And I found out later on that he was hiding the evidence, you know. But I was 17. I didn't know what to expect, what to go. And now this man knows where I live. So he drives me home. He knows where I live. And, there's so many times that God intervenes in my life. As this man is still in the shower, my sister-in-law's grandpa calls me up. And he's like, hey, I just had a feeling to check in on you. Are you okay?
Hmm.
And I couldn't tell him because I was so scared because this man is still at my house. But that was God letting me know, hey, people love you.
Mm.
But I just was scared, and I was like, yeah, I'm fine, but I am so grateful. I remember to this day that he called me because I was like, oh, God's letting me know that he loves me, even though this just happened.
Mm.
So anyways, I the next day, the next day, my boss, so this man drops me off and then he like Ubers or cabs home or whatnot. And the next day, my boss's mom called me up because I had told her the day before that I would take her shopping. And I'm a scared little girl, 17. And I was like, yeah, I'll take you shopping. And my boss went with. And I was like, I didn't know at the time, but this was him making sure that I didn't say anything to his mom, you know. And so anyways, but I was like, okay, these people know where I live. I can't say anything. I can't say no. If I say the wrong thing, they're going to come back and hurt me or hurt my brother, or I didn't know what to think. And so anyways, I didn't say anything to anybody for a week. I didn't say anything. My brother came back. I flew down to Arizona to go visit family, and I told one of my brothers, I was like, hey, I'm not a virgin anymore. And the next week, when I came back to Utah, my other brother confronted me when he picked me up from the airport. He's like, so I heard a thing. What happened while I was gone? And that's when I broke down crying. And I was like, here is what happened, you know? And he was so awesome. He took me to the police station. He took me to the hospital to get tested. He took me to my job so I can talk to the boss. And because I was like, I'm quitting my job, and they ended up firing the guy. And the police got involved, but they couldn't do anything. I don't know everything that happened, but from what I was told, because I spent time with them the next day, they couldn't do anything about it. And but yeah, anyways, so I don't know everything that happened. My parents kind of kept me shielded from that kind of stuff. But when that happened, that was the end of my self-worth. Like, my self-worth was just smashed, and it was just I didn't not know how to handle life. But at that point, it's like, well, I'm not a virgin anymore. Oh well, I'm going to do whatever the heck I want now. And again, it was like, my body's not my worth, and I'm going to do whatever. And my eating disorder got worse, my drinking got worse, my drugging got worse, the over sexualization got worse, and I wasn't doing much, to help myself mentally. And the like I said, the one thing that was kind of my saving grace that helped me hold on to life and love, was the fact that I was still doing seminary at that time. And so when like I had some really amazing seminary teachers and some really amazing spiritual experiences that kind of just help me still feel God's love. And when I was 18, I ended up getting asked to go to the church conference, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, and I went to the conference that year. And I was when I was in the building and the prophet came in, I just immediately just felt God's love and just knew that God was watching over me and was holding on to me, and no matter what I had been through, that He just loved me, and I knew that He was there. And so that was one of the key things. Besides being sealed when I was 9, this was one of the key times that held on into my life, which led into when I recovered, coming back into the church, and just knowing that God was there the entire time. So I had that experience, and so I had a little bit of hope, and my eyes were kind of like opened a little bit, and I was like, I need to do something with my life. I need to make some sort of change. I am not happy. I am not comfortable. And in my little mind, I was like, oh, I just need to move out of my parents' house because that's going to fix everything. I just, because at that point, my parents had moved up to Utah. And so I was living with my parents and my brother. And I was like, I just need to get away from family because I wanted to distance myself from anybody that cared about me, really, because I didn't care about me and I was just uncomfortable and I was still full of resentment and pain and self-pity. And so I was like, I just need to get away. And so I had told my parents, I'm like, I'm going to move in with my friend and her boyfriend. And they didn't like that idea because they didn't want me living with an unmarried man. And which I get it, you know. But I was like, well, I got to do something. And so then this is when we get into my dad's like, well, why don't you join the Navy or something? And I was like, fine, I will, you know. And so I had barely graduate. I was barely going to be able to graduate, because of all of the everything that I was more focused on, the drugs and the alcohol and the over sexualization and the drama and the pain inside of me. I was barely going to graduate. So I took six internet classes, 10 regular classes just to graduate. I was doing classes for special needs, which was a lot of fun because that was something that kind of gave me a lot of hope and purpose, was working with some special needs, you know and so I was doing that, but I wasn't going to be able to get into college where I was at. And so coming into, I'm getting ready to graduate, and I was like, I need to do something. That's the argument with my dad. And then I end up, signing in for the Army. And so I did the ASVAB. I did my first swear in, the day after graduation. Like I graduated, and then the next day I did my swear in, and then I was in the delayed entry program. And I know we'll get into that stuff in our
Yep.
next one. But
Yep.
yeah, basically overall, there was a lot of good moments in my life, but it was just so overshadowed by the resentment from my childhood that I never addressed, and then the over sexualization that happened, and then my choices based on all of that happens, and my own over sexualization, and then the drugs and the alcohol and the food addiction. And there was just so much there that I was just completely lost. But there was so much good in my life as well. I just couldn't see it at that point, you
Right.
know. So that's kind of, a little bit of my story there.
All right. Well, that's a good segue. We'll go ahead and take a quick break. Then when we come back, I'll go ahead and get into my rest of my journey from pretty much junior high to right into graduation. All right, so we'll be right back.
Join us for Hero Stock, a special event dedicated to honoring our veterans and first responders. Experience a day filled with incredible live music performed by those who served and protected our communities. Connect with our nonprofits dedicated to helping our heroes thrive. Discover the services available to support our veterans and first responders in their journey. Bring the whole family. Kids will love the fun activities designed just for them. Reconnect with your community and celebrate the courage and sacrifice of our heroes at Hero Stock. Join us for a day of music, support, and togetherness. Check us out today on www.herostock.org.
All right, all right. All right, so my turn. Woo! All right, so as I was telling you guys in the previous episode, um, my mom kind of ended up kidnapping me and taking me out of my dad's home. This was around my 6th grade year, and she takes me back to Tehachapi, where I had been living before I went to go live with my dad for a short stint. Now, when I went to go live with my dad for that short stint in time, that's where I think a lot of the transformation happened for me, where I turned from kind of like this like Christian boy, kid boy, to more of like gangster kind of boy. Like where now I'm wearing the baggy pants, sagging, gravitating towards those kinds of kids. And when I go back to Tehachapi, I'm a different person now. I'm not the same kid that I was when I go back. And I'm getting ready to start junior high back in Tehachapi. Now, when I go to start junior high, I do recognize kids that I had went to a little bit of 5th and 6th grade with. Like I said, when I went to go with my dad, it was like a really short stint, but a lot happened within that short amount of time, right? Because my dad was working into drugs, all that stuff just wasn't present. So that's where I gravitated towards the gang life and made that more of my family. So when I go back to Tattoo, I'd taken this gangster mentality with me, and I'm a different kind of kid. And now I'm starting to almost get into fights with some of the kids that I was friends with before, because now I'm a different kid. And we just don't have the same commonality anymore, because I think I'm just, big tough wannabe kind of kid, and a lot of them are like little skater dudes and stuff like that. And so we just had this little, obviously friendship thing that it started really transforming. And just like you, I kind of had to become a little bit of a chameleon. And the reason why I became that gangster kid is because otherwise I was going to get my ass kicked every single day. Right. I got on the bus. There was all these rough kids. So I really had to get myself and either become that or be the ones getting my ass kicked. And I really didn't feel like getting my butt kicked all the time. So that's what made me kind of transform into that. So when I go back to Tehachapi, um, I'm kind of transforming back to them, but not really. I still have this, gangster mentality. I already felt like I had to defend myself all the time. And I really started getting into a lot of fights around 7th and 8th grade. And I started moving around a lot as well, and this is where my instability really started. And I had to learn how to become friends. K through about 5th grade, I was always kind of at the same schools, and I grew up with those kids K through 5th. Once my parents got a divorce, the instability really started. I started off, I go live with my mom. I go to a school out there for a short stint. I end up going and living with my dad. I go to 2 different schools while I'm living with my dad, 2 different junior highs. That's because he gets in a fight with his mom and all that stuff, as I had said. So I had to transfer school again. And then when my mom goes and takes me back, I have to start a new junior high again. Right. So now I'm back now I'm like already on like 4th or 5th school. I'm and being a new kid, it sucks. And but I learned how to be the new kid because it had happened to me so many times that I just learned how to be the new kid. And like you said, you just kind of get in where you fit in and you learn how to adapt and kind of, get along with it. And I think that's kind of why I think I get along with a lot of diverse groups today. Like I can get along with just about everybody, unless you're just a crap person. But that's because I think I always had to really adapt and overcome if I really didn't want to. And I think I was more of a outgoing kind of kid always, anyways. And I wanted to be friends with people.
It's
You know,
that resiliency and trying to protect yourself. It's I have to have some sort of group around
yeah,
me. So where can I fit in?
right. And so I think, that's the thing is, and because I didn't have much of a family life at home, my friends became my family. So I really attached myself onto them friends, and I wanted to hang out with them all the time and never be at home, be out with them. We're rolling around on skateboards and doing things like that and going to the apple orchard and shooting pellet guns and things like that. And guys, bear with me through all this. My junior high is like a spider web. It really went everywhere, kind of like Marie was explaining. Same here. There's so much that happened in my junior high time frame, because there was so much instability during that time. My stability came more when I came into high school. I didn't go to more than one high school, luckily enough. That's where I finally, hey, that high school, I finished it off from freshman and I graduated from there. But before then, I went again. So I go back to Tehachapi, living in Tehachapi. And then my mom meets my stepdad. And this is around seventh grade time frame. My seventh grade time frame. Around the middle of the seventh grade time frame, I want to say. So she meets my stepdad. Well, my stepdad doesn't live in the same town as us. He lives back in the same Antelope Valley where my dad had originally took me in Lancaster, but he lives in my stepdad lived in Palmdale. So when she meets him and she starts spending a lot of time with him going there, I'm seeing the writing on the wall a little bit like, oh no, we're going to be, probably moving again, so my stepdad does asked my mom to marry him. I want to say it was like around the holidays, around the Christmas time frame. And then after that, once they get married, we got to make the move. And I didn't want to. I made a lot of friends in junior high. I've already moved like 3 or 4 different schools. I don't want to do this again. And especially junior high. Junior high is a rough time. Kids are very rough in junior high, very bully and things like that. Junior high is tough, and when I went to school, junior high was 7th and 8th grade, right? So I know a lot of people are used to 6th, 7th, and 8th, but when I went, it was 7th and 8th grade.
7th, 8th, and 9th for me. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. So yeah. So anyhow, where was I going with that? I lost my train.
Talking about moving, your mom got engaged.
Right. So when she wants to move back, I'm just like I said, I'm like, I don't want to. So I was actually able to work it out. And my mom was able to work it out with one of my best friends over there to go live with him and his family and stay and live with them. Why my mom moved back to Palmdale and when she got married to my stepdad. So that way I can finish off junior high out there and go to school. So um, I did that for a few months, I think, until my mom, I think she didn't like that no more. Right. She didn't like that. I think a lot of it was taking me away from her even more. And she felt that I was pulling away from her even more because they're not around, and now I'm kind of on my own program. I am under, different parents, but they're not my parents. And, you kind of got that mentality. They're not my parents. So I did feel like I was kind of living my high life and stuff. Right. Until it kind of wasn't. And I did find a point in time, and I think my mom moved me back around. It was after seventh grade. So she starts me in eighth grade in Palmdale. So I'd end up moving. I go through it, and I start off in a school called the Learning Plaza, and so now I'm the new kid there, and now I'm reverting even more back into my little gangster days and wannabe days because I'm right back in that same environment again, and so I'm right back into it, and now I'm a bigger dude. I've been playing football and stuff, and I kind of grew a little bit faster than a lot of the kids, so I'm feeling like a big guy and just tough and getting in a lot, like I said, a lot of fights, a lot of bathroom brawls, and acting all tough, like we're jumping a guy into the gang, and we're just doing all these things that are just crazily stupid, finding a way to fight anybody for whatever reason because we thought you were tough when you fight someone, um, and then I started learning about marijuana and weed and all that stuff as well. Um, Friends started talking about it. Didn't really know what it was. I had known that my mom had kind of talked about it because my dad did it, and I had always kind of had that smell that I knew what it was. And when I started doing it, I was like, oh, that's the smell I smell with my dad, like um, but when I go back and move with my mom for the eighth grade year, um, I'm just at this level, still, like I said, sagging my pants. I even get in trouble at school for my for dress code because I'm wearing too baggy pants and stuff. Like my very last day, they send me into, they called it SOS. It was like in school detention because I was wearing too big of my baggy pants. So I was really still trying to kind of, I was really having identity issues, I think, at that junior high level where I'm just kind of gravitating towards whoever I thought was cool, and I was kind of becoming that level. Well, then transferring into my going from eighth grade into my freshman year, I I end up losing my virginity, right? And I'm getting in touch with my sexuality now. And I'm coming across girls that want to do stuff. And I'm like, I'm like, what? Like this is stuff all my friends talk about, and you I think at our age we do a lot of things to kind of be cool, right? Or hey, look, guess what I did? We're those brag points that we try to always go for, you know. Um and not knowing what the hell I'm doing, right? I mean, I'm have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm starting to get more curious with it and getting in tune with it. And I didn't really touch much on this, but I was exposed to pornography and stuff at a young age, hanging out with kids. They had Playboys and stuff like that. We'd go out in the desert and they bring out these Playboys. So I was exposed at a young age to sexuality, like, seeing naked boobs and, women doing things to men and men doing things to women in these pages. Um, and so, I don't think I've ever really tapped into that so much as now I'm kind of thinking about it. Cause even when you were talking about, I was like, gosh, I didn't even think that I had some sexuality issues when I started because I was exposed to certain things at a young age. And now I'm looking at it and like, man, obviously that all played into some of the actions that happened later. Right.
it's amazing the connections that you can start finding, especially as you make the decision to go through the healing process and you start looking at, okay, where did this come from? Where did this come from? When did this start? And the things that you realized that you pushed away or you did not think that it affected you. And then you're like, oh, hey, this is a connection. This is a point. So, I encourage like other people who may be on their journeys to start thinking about those things and be prepared, because it gets emotional because you're like, oh crap, this was trauma. I just thought it was normal. No, that was actual trauma. And so be compassionate for yourself. And so
Yeah,
it sounds like
when you
that's
start
what you're
peeling
doing
back
as
those
well.
layers of those onions, be ready to deal with some things that may not be comfortable to deal with. But that's part of the
Yes.
healing process, and that's how we move forward. Is kind of you're never going to be able to change the past, but you can kind of deal with it, right? And
Yes.
process it. So going into my freshman year, I'm dressing like a gangster, and I'm a wannabe. I would consider myself a wannabe at this point, and I play football. I'm on the football team, and when you get into high school, the environment changed a lot, especially if you played sports. You wear the Letterman jackets, you dress more like a jock, um, you have a different image, right? Than I was from my little gangster time. So here I come in being a wannabe my freshman year and playing football, and it just wasn't jiving with the older kids and all that, like the way I was, right? They started, trying to call me out and stuff, like and try to punk me and everything. I was really getting to the level almost being picked on, right? And I'm just not that kind. You poke me, I'm gonna fight back. I don't give a crap how old you are. And I pretty much embarrassed a senior my freshman year because they thought they were gonna punk me out. Well, you messed with the wrong kid. I'm not that kind. And I've already came from a level of always having to protect myself, right, against the gangsters and everybody else that I was kind of around. I had to learn how to be tough and deal with that kind of stuff and not just cower down, because if you do, you will be eaten alive. So um I also, so my freshman year, I went from playing football, and then a lot of the guys that I was really good friends with on the football team decided they wanted to do wrestling. Well, for me, man, I was like, wrestling, bro. Those guys wear those little tight things, and they're groping each other. And, I was like, that's, back when we're saying stupid things like that's gay, and um, just putting the label on that kind of stuff. Well, I end up going and doing it, right? And lo and behold, do I find out like, whoa, man, this is not some, little foofy sport. It is the hardest sport I think I've ever tried to do, because the amount of energy you have to use in a match is crazy. And if you don't have the stamina, you may do good within the first minute, but someone can pin you after the minute because you just lost all your stamina. So, I got into the wrestling team, and now when I get on the wrestling team, it's integrated. It's all the grades, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. We're all together. Football, it was freshmen and then JV and varsity. So the freshmen were all together, and the JV, wrestling, they just got all ages all in there together. Well, those older guys, they were, all big dudes, seniors, and they were busting my chops like constantly. I mean, as a freshman on that team, they almost got me to the level where I almost didn't want to wrestle anymore. But that's because I think that they were trying to pull something out of me, and they were like, "Oh, this guy's not no SA or whatever." He's, they just really busted my chops to the level where I pretty much changed my image. I ended up becoming here I am getting the tighter jeans, wearing the Stussy shirts and the, the all
I
the
haven't heard that in forever. That's awesome.
all the old school stuff that we had from Pac Sun, Vans, I'm kind of turning myself into being a jock, right? And um, gravitating and hanging out with all the jock at the jock table and the cheerleaders and all that. That was kind of where I got myself into.
Became more of a chameleon again.
Yes, again, right? Yes. And I'm molding into the group that I want to be with, right? I want to play the sports and stuff like that, but my image may not fit with that group, so I had to adapt and become that image, right? So I cut my hair. I mean, my image totally changed. If you were to look at my picture from like 8th freshman year into going into my sophomore year, huge transition, right? And even just from the people I'm hanging out with, because also I'm a decent football player. So my freshman year, I get bumped up after, the freshman season's over. I get bumped up and get pulled up to varsity. So I skipped the JV level. Now I'm hanging out with the juniors and the seniors. They got cars, every Friday night after the game, there's a big party at someone's house. There's a party train that goes, to the houses, and, we're all just jumping in. So I really end up getting into the party scene at this level where it's drinking, smoking weed. I didn't really dip into like the harder stuff because I was always afraid I was going to have a heart attack or die if I just did like a blind or something, because I've always saw the stories, and that scared me enough to where I was like, I think I don't want to try that stuff. Now, I'm not going to say I didn't try it, because I did try it later when I got older. But when I was younger, right, my freshman, sophomore year, I was just more into really drinking a lot and party every single weekend, having sex with, I had a girlfriend at the time, and, we were trying to have sex and all that stuff. And I ended up getting her pregnant. I'm a sophomore. She's a freshman. She's a cheerleader. I'm on the football team. And I find out she's pregnant. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and my moral values and the way I was raised is that you don't have an abortion. You keep the baby, and that's just the way I was raised. And that's the beliefs I've my foundation. I still stand behind that. This was not the baby's doing. This was a decision I made, and we both made. And anyway, so when I find out she's pregnant, everything just goes, it's just her and I, and we were going to like the clinic to find out if, all the things like how far along is she, all this stuff. And I'm really on this journey kind of by myself. I'm super scared. I don't want anybody to know at this rate. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I'm thinking, oh my God, my mom's going to kill me. My life's over as I know it, and she felt the same way. Here she is. This is her freshman year. She's just being a cheerleader. It took a lot for her to make the cheerleading team, all these things. And now, she's going to have this belly and right off rip freshman year. So we end up having to break it to our parents.
And that was probably really hard.
Oh God, it was so hard to break that to my mom, because I was living with my mom and stepdad, and with the religion, as well. They're Christians, and you don't do that kind of stuff out of wedlock. I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, what do I do? I'm a sophomore, man. I just barely got my license. I'm driving. I love playing sports. I'm thinking, oh, everything's over, and I go tell my parents, and they were actually, they took it a lot better than I thought they would. Right. And they were way more, supportive than like I said, I thought they would be. And of course, my parents, their position never buckled. They wanted me to have the child. And I was awesome. At the same level.
You had that support.
Right. And so, so much so that they actually got one of those abortion videos and made me and her watch that abortion video. Right. because her and her family had a little bit of a different thought about this, right? Here's their daughter. She's 15 years old. She just started her high school career, all the things I had mentioned before. A parent, they don't want to be grandparents right now. They have two other daughters that aren't too much younger than her, right? Like coming up behind her. So now they got to be an example, right? And so just like my parents supported me, her parents supported her, and um,
in the opposite direction.
one day, yes, they wanted the abortion, right? And so I was highly against it. So what had happened is that maybe a few days later or whatever, after all our talks and everything, maybe even a week or so, she calls me up and she tells me she had a miscarriage. And I'm just like, oh, sheesh, and she's upset and everything about the miscarriage. And at that point in time, I'm like, okay, well, gosh dang, I guess we dodged a bullet and all that. And that was that. That was my sophomore year. Well, junior year, there's a prom, and her and I kind of already had we broke up like right at the beginning of my junior year. Well, we still kind of wanted to go to prom together. And so we were talking about going to prom together. And I've always had this gut feeling about that whole thing because we never talked about it after she said she had the miscarriage. We just literally she had the miscarriage and we didn't discuss anything after that. It was almost like
pretend it doesn't exist.
We washed it away, right? Or flushed it away. No joking there. But I ended up asking her like, hey, did you really have a miscarriage? And I could see in her face that right off rip that she was scared to give me that answer because she knew how much I was against it. And obviously I'm still asking about this later in time. And she couldn't hold that back. And she was just like, yes, I had an abortion. And I just got sick to my stomach. I threw up. I got so upset with her. I said, I don't want to see you ever again. I said, I cannot believe that you did that. Knowing how hard and I was fighting for that. I cannot believe you lied to me in all these years. And that, and my reaction was just basically I blew up and I, like I said, I got sick to my stomach where I threw up and I was just like, get out of my house. I can't believe it. I was so upset.
You were heartbroken. You just the person that you love and care for has lied to you, and then you realize that you lost this little extension of you that you were excited, like you were scared, but you were excited to hold on to, and it was gone, not by God's will, but by an action of somebody, and that's got to be hard. It's got to be hard.
And I started feeling a little blame. I took that little baby's life myself, right? Because I made the action to create that child, and so that really did mess me up a little bit. And oddly enough, around the same time, my mom gets pregnant with my little brother. So, I'm it would have been crazy if we would have had babies because my brother, the uncle they would have been down near the same age. But I mean, I know that things happen for, the way that they happen. And I think I look back at it and I did forgive her. And I did say, I'm sorry for my reaction because the initial reaction for me was just devastation and taking some blame and owning, like I'm responsible for this. It did not set well with me, and I don't think that I ever really processed that ever as because life goes on and you got to move on forward, and I'm just young, right? And there's a lot of good that probably came out of me not having the child, unfortunately, but because my life could have changed dramatically and I probably wouldn't have ended, where I was. But I got to say that I spent a lot of my high school years partying, and my family became my friends to the point where we all got like matching tattoos and things like that. They were my family. I spent a lot of my days and times with them, like more than I did with my own mom and stepdad and family at home. And that's just because, like I said, I didn't really ever feel part of the family dynamic. There was always a part that I felt like my mom loved my sister more. Um, and I was always back and forth between my dad and my mom. My sister always stayed with my mom, so I just always felt somewhat like an outsider, especially even when I became the wannabe in me. The church really turned their backs on me at a point in time when I probably needed them the most. They decided to judge me and pass judgment on me and make me feel some kind of a way that would eventually have an effect on me as an adult, right? And so, um, there's just there's so much to all of this, right? I could probably go on for a long time in terms of all the things that I've been through throughout my high school and junior high days because of the lack of stability. Once my mom got married to my stepdad and I moved and I stayed there, that's when I had some kind of a nucleus to have. And that's where the stability started to happen. But at that point in time, I was already so separated from that family dynamic that I created my own family dynamics with my friends. Right. And so I leaned heavily on my friends. And that's why I think that I held them so like I held them to such a standard that they let me down so many times because I had these expectations of them, right? And that's fun. That's messed up of me that I put expectations on others. But I had those expectations because I was putting so much into them, right? That I wanted the same thing back. So um I think that now reflecting back on a lot of that, that's something I think I'm just now kind of even sensing and seeing myself for the one of the first times as well is how much my expectations for others were back when I was young, right? And I wasn't even having any expectations for my dang self, but I had all these other expectations for others, and I think that's where a lot of disappointment came in my life, or I didn't feel fulfilled, is because I had all these expectations. And when you have set of expectations, I say caution yourself with expectations because if they're not met, it does have a little trinkle on that disappointment level, right? So, yeah. So I think that for me, and when I get in, I graduate high school. I'll go to that extent. I graduate high school. I really don't know have any direction when I graduate high school. My whole plans were to go play college football. I had gotten some little bit of some letters. The biggest one was from Hawaii University, and then a lot of them were like little D2 schools. And I was like, oh man, I would really want to play football, but because my psych was more on the party life and stuff like that, I wasn't concentrating on my future at all because I was just living, day like, yeah, party it up. And then all of a sudden, you got to learn that the windows start to close for you as you get older in life. And that even happens from the day you graduate. That window starts to shrink up. And that's exactly what happened to me. Is all of a sudden I get to a point and the window's like already getting ready to close. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with myself? I didn't get myself set up into football. And the only way I end up going to a JC because they wanted me to play football there so bad that they ended up giving me a schedule. And none of the classes, I didn't pick no classes at all. It was what they gave me. And it was like weightlifting, sewing. I mean, literally, it was like a whole bunch of classes that would do me no purpose other than they wanted me to play football.
Yeah.
I would have been on their whatever their trajectory was for me. And, and I think I had a point in my life where I just was like, man, I need to do something different because I need to get myself out of this environment or I'm just going to be a product of this environment. So I had to make that tough decision one day and say, I can't hang out with these guys no more. They're smoking weed. They're doing stuff I cannot do no more. I can't smoke weed. I don't want to be all drunk. I'm trying to get into the military. So I had to make that decision. And that was really rough to not go hang out with them, calling me and ignoring their calls or back them pagers and stuff, just ignoring it. And I had a mission and I stuck with it. So when we do our next episode, we'll kind of continue on what happens, once we decide to make our next step in life. And that's around the 18-year-old mark for me when
And me.
yep, and when I ended up making the change and turned 19 in boot camp. So that will be interesting to say. But nevertheless, you could see that a lot of our story, even though we're from two different paths of life, she's a female, I'm a male. There's a lot of similarities to what we've done. And she comes from foster parents. I come from a product of divorce. So even people that come from divorce, you can feel like a foster kid because you're back and forth. You have two different homes. You could even have a stepmom here, stepdad over here. They get a divorce, and you got stepchildren. I mean, we've created this, right? And I've unfortunately I've kept the dang thing going, and I didn't break that nasty omen of divorce. So I hope my kids can be a better product of that, and how I think they can is I talk to them a lot about everything now, and I'm way more transparent with them as they're becoming young adults. I don't want to see them make the same mistakes as I did, and that would be foolish for me to ever let them do that. I have now a full set of a toolbox with a whole bunch of instruments in there that I've learned throughout the way. So I believe in, hey, let's hand out some of the instruments to others that may not have that in their toolbox. Because you never know
That's
when they may need to go to that toolbox and grab it.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I started writing, and it's also one of the reasons why I have a couple children's books that I'm working on. Like I don't have children myself, but as I've been doing this journey of looking into my inner child and looking into the things that happened with me, there's a lot of things that I wish that I would have known, or I wish that different choices that I would have made, different knowledge that I would have had. And so that's one of the reasons why I start writing, because I'm writing to that inner child, but also writing for the next generation. If they want, I try to be open, like with my nieces and nephews, or with friends' children, or this, that, and the other. There's a certain level of openness you can be with
Sure.
children. However, just giving them the tools, like, hey, if you ever feel like this, here is what you can do. If you ever experience something like this, here is what you can do. But that's exactly why I do the writing, because I'm trying to be more transparent. And then also trying to help our generation, and younger and older, help them process through the same things that I've gone through, and try to yeah, be transparent and offer the tools that I've been given. Like you're doing it for your children, I'm doing it for other people. And I love that, because it's so super important to identify what we've been through and what tools that we've used to get out. And it sounds like both of us kind of went through that situation where we knew that the trajectory we were on was not going to be healthy. And so we made our choice to join the military to try to do something better. And
Yeah.
like, we'll get into it. And like, we made our own mistakes during that time and after, but both of us now are again on this trajectory of trying to share healing with other people. And so I love that. It's like, you're never too old or too young to change the trajectory of your life. However, wherever you go, there you will be. And so you've got to do some sort of healing to be able to get to a different place. And so yeah, I love it. Like I love that we're doing this because I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? But I think that a lot of this stuff, when you start to talk about it almost starts to like connect some things, right? Even now when we're talking about things, like I'm just like putting things into perspective because a lot of me, I have not been able to deal with my story with a clear mind, right? I've always had things. I've never been mentally healthy, and I wouldn't consider myself mentally healthy now, but I would say I'm in a way better state of mind than I ever have been before. So now when I reflect, it's a different way of remembering and connecting with it and being able to deal with it, right? Because now I have a healthier mind and now I can put things in perspective. I don't try to make myself a victim or something to that degree. I know how to decipher, like, oh, and there's a lot of things too as I become an adult and a parent where it's put a little bit of grace on my heart for my parents.
Yes,
And
very
to give
much.
them a grace and to give them forgiveness and to say, hey, you know what? I get it. It's okay, But I think that every generation has an responsibility to the next generation, generational responsibility to give them a better place, to give them a better opportunity, right? Our generation of parents is probably a really rough set of parents because of the way we all were um, taught. And a lot of us were never explained things. It was always just go, figure it out on your own, figure it out on your own. Some of us don't have the capability to figure out some things. Some of us figured it out earlier. Some of us are still trying to figure it out. But that's the thing about it is that's where instability comes. And that's why it's so important to provide as much stability for your kids and for your family as you can. Because when everything becomes unstable, everything's out of whack, and it's really hard to deal with things when it's that chaotic. When you already got 10 other chaotic things, throw another 11 and 12, 13 chaotic things. How are you going to deal with that? Right? So, um, everybody have grace on yourself. Have a little bit of grace on your own self and don't be so rough on yourself. And don't make an excuse for yourself. You know what? Yeah, we may be coming from a bad this or that, but that doesn't mean we got to carry it on. Don't take the damn
Mhm.
torch and just keep running with it. Hey, burn that torch out and light your own torch, and then you carry on a better torch, and let's pass on a better torch to the next generation. You
Yeah.
know, and it's a damn shame if we don't. There's so much education out there. There's the ability, social media. There's things out there for us to be able to be a better place. We just got to utilize it and exercise it and really put forward the effort to do things. It's tough to be that parent to say no to things. It's a lot easier to say yes, but your kids don't need to hear yes all the time. They need to hear some no's, right? So
Yeah.
everybody out there, we appreciate you guys. Like I said, this is it's not easy coming on here and talking about all this stuff, but it's important, as you see, as we're talking through it, that we're identifying things and we're putting relations on. And I'm sure once we kind of end this, we'll have a very like a final thought on a lot of it. Um,
Yeah.
but also, it's a very foggy time frame for me. I remember some things. I don't remember everything. I'm not, just because I've talked about a lot of the bad things in my life, that doesn't mean my childhood was just complete shit and rough. You know, that's not what I'm saying here. And then
That's the same here. Same here.
right,
Like there's a lot of fog, but there's a lot of good as well. And that's one of the big things, with going through this journey is like seeing that the perspectives were wrong. And like there's another poem that I would like to share with you before we go, if that's
yep,
okay. Just kind of
yep.
kind of
No,
like
that's how we're
about
gonna
that
end it.
kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. but that's kind of where I'm at, is learning that new perspective, right? Seeing things from different eyes. And like we were talking about the resentments and getting lost in the resentments, and kind of seeing things from that different perspective. And so would you mind if I share this poem with
Let's
you?
do it. Nope.
Okay, so as I spoke about last time, I've got this book coming out that's the More Me Than I Used to Be, A Journey to Freedom. And part of it, the first section, is 4 poems of a journey series, is what I call them. And so last podcast I read the first part. This one is the 4th one in that series. And this is kind of where I'm at right now with some of those changes of perspectives. Like you said, trying to look at, hey, there was a lot of good, there was just a lot of pain that I was stuck in. And so I just want to share this. I wrote this one back in December, and so I'll just go ahead and read it. So it's called Continuing in Faith, and it's a journey poem number 4. Have you ever wondered what it's like to feel safe, or how you can find comfort when life makes you chafe? Have you ever heard that voice from deep inside that tells you that it's time to get off this bumpy ride? Have you been so lost the idea of light was crazy, and sitting in the darkness made you feel less hazy? That is what my life was like before the journey started. And here is what my mind was like before the clouds had parted. Unmet expectations, resentment, then frustration, then logic out the windows. That's the way my brain goes. Then loop the loop, it goes around. Solutions to this can't be found. In it, I can't stop this mess. I'm going crazy, I confess. I couldn't find a path to safety. I felt I had to fight everything and everyone each day and each night. I couldn't find safety. I didn't feel free, even though my life seemed so happy-go-lucky. When I started on this journey, I found I wasn't alone. Others had these same feelings. My mind was blown. I didn't feel so isolated. They gave me tools to fight. They showed me how they found God and came into the light. When I started trusting Him, the one who is above, He filled my heart completely with gratitude and love. He started healing broken parts with help from the Savior, and really started changing the kinks in my behavior. I have much to learn and many layers to unfold. I feel like a new story in my life is being told. I'm finding safety in the light. The darkness is retreating. And in regards to others, I don't feel like I'm competing. I'm continuing in faith, challenging that voice, the one that tries to tell me I'm making the wrong choice. It tries to tell me I'm not worthy or others are to blame, and tries to overcome me with darkness and with shame. Now that I have felt the warmth within the light, it gives me strength as I continue in this fight. I know all this is temporary. I have helped to make it through. Now I can turn my heart to being there for you. If you have felt the same as me, finding comfort in the dark, I hope you get to read this and maybe feel a spark. There is love around that others can help you feel. Sometimes, like me, you may have felt it wasn't real. Please keep moving forward. The light will start to show from a loving God above who wants you all to know you have worth just like me, even though our paths contrast. And at the end of the journey, we will rewrite our past.
Man, you know what? Those are that one's perfect for what we just talked about, really.
Yeah, thank
Poems
you.
fit your poems fit perfect with our conversations.
Well, this is this is the stuff that I've been really jumping into the last 8 years. Is like I said before, I am my past hasn't changed. I'm a different storyteller. I'm rewriting how I talk about my
You
past, how
found
I
your
learn, and
voice.
how I
I feel
grow.
like yeah, I
Yes.
feel like you found your voice, and now you're taking your trauma and turning it into advocacy, right? And you're trying to advocate, I think, and you found your good headspace, and I think you want to get others as close as they can too, right? I mean, everybody's going to have their own journeys in time, but the more of us that are out there and we're talking about it and talking about how we've kind of climbed through it and gone through the mud and sit here and know that we've done shitty things, but we've forgiven ourselves, right? We've given ourselves that grace.
And
And I think
doing
that's
the
where a
best
lot
to
of
make amends where we can, like
right, and a
make
lot of
right
people just
what we
start
can.
shaming themselves and they don't get off that. And they just want to shame. I'm a horrible person because I did X, Y, and Z.
One of the biggest amends that I had to make was to myself, was finding that love and that forgiveness and be like, it doesn't matter how far down the scale you went. It doesn't matter, how bad you were sick. It's not that you were bad. You were sick. And so can you have grace for a sick person who's dying from cancer? Can you have grace for a sick person who's dying from trauma, who is lost in addictions? And so being able to find that peace and that love within myself. I still struggle with it. I still have that voice that tells me all the time that I'm not worth it, that I should give in, but that is the thing that I try to do every day, is find that compassion and that love for myself. And in finding that love for myself, it helps me have passion and compassion for others, and helps me find that forgiveness for other people as well.
Yeah, and I think too the hard part about it is that when we're kids, our logic is not defined, right? Our logic is very touchy. At kid logic is not the same as adult logic. So you just throw in some drugs and alcohol that have an adverse effect on your logic. Give it to a kid. What the hell I mean, what do you expect, right? I mean, the kids are going to do what they see. They emulate things on the movie. A lot of um, sexuality comes out when you add in drugs and alcohol. It just does. I don't know why. You know, we can't contain ourselves. We start trying to be adult and trying to do adult things, and the logic is skewed. And that's why I'm saying you throw in something that even skews that logic even more. You're really messing with some things right there, right? I mean, the perfect storm is bound to happen. And I was exposed to young drinking because one of my friends' mom would go out and buy us all alcohol. And it was guys and girls, and we're all around the same age. And what do you think? I mean, how do you think we start acting when we start drinking? We're doing dumb things that we normally would not be doing, but now we have an excuse. And then that's the other thing. Oh, I was drunk. So you start finding excuses to why you did your actions, and now you're just slinging them on. Oh, I was drunk. I was too faded. I was well, shit. Then should you be doing that stuff? I don't know. Obviously you're going that you're doing things that are not out of your character. Maybe you need to adjust yourself, but that's the hard part. We all want to be socially accepted by our peers and everybody around us. And some of us really put too much into that. We put way too much emphasis on what others think or how they feel, and or whether we can be a part of that and how do we fit in. And so that's when the overcompensation starts happening. And now you're already at an identity crisis, and now you're overcompensating, trying to be something that you're maybe not even close to being, because you just want to fit in. And that's the hard part. And so I hope everybody out there, if you got young ones, and maybe you're just a young adult yourself and you're hearing some of this stuff, you know, uh, maybe this will help you guys start processing through it a little bit as well. There's people out there you can reach out to if you guys are struggling out there mentally wise and you need some help and you don't want to share with anybody. Call the Crisis Lifeline. It's 988. If you're a veteran, press 1. It'll put you in touch with someone who can talk to you about your issues and maybe point you in the right directions if you're struggling with resources and things of that nature, or if you just need someone to straight talk to. Right, you just need a friend and no one else is answering your call. Give them a try. And that's what they're there for. So let's exercise that and get that right. Also, you guys feel free, if you would like to get in touch with myself or Marie, you can email me at everydaysasaturday365 at yahoo.com. And if you want to get in touch with Marie, I can put you in touch with her as well. But guys, you're not alone out there, and just because you think you have a unique story, I promise you're probably not alone. May not be exactly to everybody else's, but don't be afraid to share that and have talks with others. Hear podcasts like these and hear other people talk about it. Maybe you'll start connecting some dots for you as well. Maybe something we say, you're like, oh my gosh, because a lot of times when you have some trauma in your life, you tend to put it back in a filing cabinet and you just shut it, and you hope that you don't ever see that file again. But sometimes shit opens and the filing cabinet just pops open, and there's something that you didn't want to deal with that you got to deal with. So
it's like a balloon that you're overfilling. You just
right?
keep stuffing stuff, stuff it, and then at some point it will pop. It will pop.
100%. And so that's I can only give you guys as much advice, but one of my biggest advices out there is, as an issue comes, try to deal with it not right away, right? Give yourself emotional time to process things, right? Because sometimes when you get in touch with something, your emotions go crazy and you're like about the situation, so your reaction might not be as well. Take some time to digest what happened. Give yourself some thoughts. Allow yourself to go crazy on one end, but don't go showing that to everybody else. You can do that on your own. Come back and then process it and go deal with it in a healthier manner. Sometimes it's not easy to talk to people or something like that. It's better to talk about it to someone else that can't fix the damn problem. You're just talking to them about your issue and they can't fix it. Go talk to the people that you have the issue with and get that fixed. Deal with your problems as they come, because otherwise you're just going to end up having a whole thing that just starts piling up. And then eventually it gets to the level of you can't deal with any of it. So and I say start back at your younger ages. Pull back your childhood. There's some good there. There's some bad there. Let's process through the bad. Let's hang on to the good, and let's share some of that good and have some fun and reach back, like we were saying on our last episode. Reach into that inner child. It's okay. Have some fun, right? You got any last words, Marie, before we head out?
Just the biggest thing that I can say is, if you genuinely want to go through this healing journey on your own, like what we're doing right now is we are talking into a lot of the trauma, right? And then we'll get into how we've been able to face through it and whatnot. But the most important thing that I'll say is, as you are going into this trauma, also make sure that you're trying to identify some of the good, try to identify some of the faith, try to identify some of the hope. And as you're going through it, make sure that you're not doing it alone. That is the biggest thing. Have a therapist, have a friend, have a church person, 988, you can call them even if you're not suicidal, but just have somebody, some sort of support group, that you can talk to help you process through this, because a broken thinker can't fix a broken thinker. So if you have been stuck in this cycle of going round and round and you're trying to go into it, you're going to keep going round and round until you have somebody else on the outside that can help you with those tools. So please try to do it, to reach out to somebody. And especially as you're going through this journey, you're going to go through moments, and I'll talk about it in a future podcast. You're going to go through these moments that as you start addressing this stuff, it's like there are fingers that grab onto you and start tearing your skin, trying to pull you back down into pain and to addictions and to frustration and resentment.
Evil does not want you to win.
Yes. Evil or resentments, negativity, addictions, whatever it is, will try to grab onto you to pull you down. So you cannot do it by yourself, because you will get lost. So all I can say is just reach out for help. Don't do this on your own. And like, if you have nobody else to talk to, you got Bryan and me. Look us up. We are willing to help. We are willing to support. We are willing to be there for you. So,
and that's the thing, guys. Be prepared on this journey. It's not an easy journey by no means. And there's going to be a lot of times where you almost feel like you want to give up on trying to get better because you're dealing with things that are too hard. just don't give up, guys. That's part of it. It's part of that process, and be ready for that. Just be ready for anybody to try to knock you off of you trying to heal, because that's a thing that and sometimes it'll be your friends or your family seeing that you're trying to
Yes.
do better, and then they're hating on that fact. They like you in that bad state of mind. They don't want you to be outside of that because you're just too powerful of a human being, right? So be ready for their people to try to knock you off your journey or to try to throw some hurdles in there along the way. Hey,
And I
pile through
yeah.
it.
And I will say one thing too. Okay, so when you get into these moments of overwhelm, it is okay to take breaks as well.
Yep.
You can take breaks, rest on the plateaus. Rest on the plateaus. Give yourself give
I like
yourself
that.
breaks, because if you don't give yourself breaks, then you'll roll down the hill quick too. And so it's like, go in moments, go in sections. And I'll talk about that in a future podcast. Is like, I've had to go through section and section and section of, okay, I'm processing this right now. Okay, I need to take a break. I'm processing through this right now. Okay, I need to take a break. And so taking a break does not mean you're going backwards. And that's one thing that some people get into. If I'm not moving forward, I'm going backwards. You can tread water and stay in the same place for a little while, and that's okay. It's just when you stop treading the water and you start reverting, that is when it gets dangerous. So as you keep moving forward, take your breaks, but just be prepared that especially in those breaks is when the addictions and the negativity and the evil is going to keep fighting. So this is where you depend more fully on your higher power, on your support system, and let them help you and hold you until you're ready to fight some more.
And that goes along with my analogy of life. I look at life as climbing in a mountain, right? And couldn't have said it better. Think about it. When you get overly fatigued, your mindset is not right, right? So you got to learn to take healthy breaks when it's the right time. Don't go over fatiguing yourself. And then when you start to over fatigue yourself, you get in an emotional state and you cannot think clearly. So just like she said, when you're climbing up those mountains, find those little plateaus that you can just rest on. Take a break if you need a day or two. Get your bearings back. Get right back up on that mountain and climb. Sometimes you're going to hit those weathers, the storms that are going to make it slippery, and you're going to end up sliding down. Grab your freaking instruments out and dagger into that mountain and dig in. Don't allow yourself to keep slipping down. It's okay to slide down a little sometimes. It's going to happen. But guess what? Rest up and get your ass back right up that mountain and get back onto trying to get to the top. And just because we reach one top doesn't mean that there's not another mountain's going to happen eventually later down the road. You're just going to be ready for that next mountain. You're going to be in better shape. You're going to have the tools that got you through and got you to the top of that last mountain. So
and based on that as well, there's sometimes the tools we have won't allow us to go up a certain mountain. So we have to use the tools we have for the smaller mountain that we're at right now. And then once we're there, we get the tools to continue up the higher mountain. Like when you're first going on this journey, you can't climb Everest. You have to climb a hill. So do it. You've got the tools to get up this hill. And then when you get up this hill, then you get tools to move up to the next section and then the next section. So don't try to climb Everest with just, a bottle of water. You need more tools. So don't try to take on too much. So be patient with yourself. It's a slow journey sometimes. And sometimes you think that you're going uphill, but you're just walking on this plateau for miles, and that's okay too. So just have that patience and that grace for yourself.
You quickly learn how fast the tools you're lacking as soon as you start climbing up that hill, right? And you start to realize, oh my gosh, I needed this tool. I don't got this, right? So that's how we start to learn for the next climb, right? And that's part of the journey, guys. Is I would love to think that everybody would be 100% perfect, and that's subjective. 100% perfect is extremely subjective, because your 100% may not be my 100%. And so on. So it's very subjective. But nevertheless, guys, just keep climbing your mountains, keep pushing. And Marie and I are going to be here, and we're taking you through our journeys. And hopefully, you guys can learn a thing or two from us. And if there's anything else out there you guys want us to talk about, or even you want to hear a little bit more about something that we've talked about and you want us to elaborate more on it, once again, go ahead and email me. Every day is a Saturday, 365 at yahoo.com. And we'll cover those things. And if you guys like what you guys are seeing as well, and you like Marie and me on here, after we get done with this series, maybe we could just have a nice little talk show where you guys bring up different issues or topics, and Marie and I will sit there and hammer away at them, and you get our perspective on it. And maybe we could start bringing on some others as well. But other than that, hey, you guys have an amazing day out there, and don't let the day kick your ass. Make sure you're out there kicking it. Until next time, we'll see you guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.